Now time for our meeting, and as required by state law, pursuant to Utah Code, West Valley City has determined that this meeting will be held electronically without an anchor location given the ongoing novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. West Valley City has determined the pandemic presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. This meeting, therefore, will be held electronically. Members of the press and public are invited to view this meeting electronically live on YouTube at www.youtube.com/user/WVCTV. With that, we call our meeting to order. We note that, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Is everyone here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Everybody is online. I didn't check that before. And so with that full complement of the council here, we will begin by the minutes of December 15th. We haven't held a meeting since then, so.
Move to approve the minutes of December 15th, 2020.
Second? Oh,
Correct. I don't hear any comments about the minutes. So with that, without objection, the minutes will be approved. Hearing no objection, I rule that that passes unanimously. The minutes are approved. Next, we have the review of our agendas for later this evening. Our regular city council meeting agenda, from what we discussed in our last study meeting, has not changed. I think the same is true of the other meetings. The redevelopment agency and municipal building authority are for the purposes of new chair and vice chair. So is the housing authority, but the housing authority has budget on it. And so those are very, very straightforward, very brief items. So, and chairs, are there anything else on those?
Just if Nicole could possibly email us out the copy of that we're supposed to say at the start. So each of our meetings will be in accordance with the law.
Absolutely, I can do that, sir.
Actually, it's on the agenda. Each of the agendas, it has that statement.
I didn't see it.
Well, I mean, I
It's on there.
emailed mine, but it is up there on the, I'm just looking at them now. At least on the ones attached to the study meeting.
Yes. And I see that as well.
And it is on the other ones as well.
Yeah. However, Don, Nicole, if you could go ahead and email that to him just so he has it available.
Yeah, because the only thing I see on my agenda to go is just the call to order.
Okay.
I can do that,
What-
sir.
Yeah, just make sure that each of the chairs have that just as a double check. And they can delete it if they don't need it or ignore it. Okay, so any questions on those, or we move forward? Move forward. We have a public hearing scheduled for next week. It's application ZT-9-2020 and ordinance 21-01 to amend a section of our municipal code governing applications for RM zoning. And so there's Steve Pastrick. I have this, it's like a quilt with all these pastures together, you know, and I got to see which face is on which piece of the quilt. So Steve, if you'll take us through this and tell us what this is and if it meets the discussion that we had before and what those items were. Because
Right.
it's been 3 weeks. The rest of council remember them all, but I need help to be reminded what they all were. Okay?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So this is actually a petition by Randy Moore, who's a home developer. And his petition here is to amend the criteria that we use to determine whether a property is eligible to be rezoned to the RM zone. So right now in the code, there are already several standards that we use to determine whether a property would even be eligible to apply for RM zoning. If a property doesn't meet those standards, then we don't accept an application for a rezone. What Randy's asking is that the standards be modified to allow for a property that has access and frontage on a road that has an 80-foot right-of-way to be rezoned to the RM zone if it meets a couple more criteria. And that is, first, that the density would be no more than 7 units per acre. And then the other would be that it's an exempt housing development, which in other words, what that means is that it would be a senior housing development, okay? And so again, just to review the 3 conditions that would apply in order to make it eligible would be having access and frontage on a street with 80 feet of right of way, that the density is no more than 7 units per acre, and then it's essentially a senior housing development. So to give you an idea, a 7 units to the acre project is something similar to the Valley View Villas. That's the single level condos on 48th West, just south of 35th South. There's also Hunter Villas, also projects that was referred to as Majestic Villas. So it would be a development like that. So single level condos where you have typically we've seen buildings with 4 units in a building. So that's the request. And if I can share my screen here for a minute, I want to just outline a few things I think would help the council when you're considering this. And so this first slide is a map of the city. And I know there's a lot of information on this, so I'll explain what we're looking at. So first of all, the roads that are with a solid black line, so a thick solid black line, those are roads that are 100 feet or larger in terms of right-of-way width. So those streets are streets where a property is already eligible to apply for RM zoning, okay? Those that are the thick dashed lines are those that are 80-foot rights of way. So examples would be 7200 West, for example, or 3100 or portions of 3100 South. So those would be roads that would be eligible under this proposed change from Mr. Moore. So those are the streets. Then we also have some other items on this map. The different colors represent vacant properties that are at various stages of approval or their status. So for example, blue properties on this map are properties that are vacant and there's no pending development, there's no prior approvals, they're just vacant properties. Ones in orange are ones that are actually being reviewed for some type of development. Those in red have some type of development agreement. And then those in green are ones that actually have been through a review process but have yet to be constructed. So just to give the council an idea of where potential projects could go and then how those relate to streets that would be eligible under this change. Finally, there's the 2.5 circles. You can see more to the right of the map, the purple circles. What those represent are the half-mile radius from the track stations, which if you recall, the one closest to Redwood Road, it only applies on the west side of Redwood Road and does not apply on the east side of Redwood Road. So hopefully that just helps provide some context. This next slide just shows the age breakdown of the population of West Valley. And with a senior development, the way those work is that at least one occupant of a unit has to be 55 or older. And that would apply to 80% of the units. So 80% of the units would have to have at least one occupant that is 55 or older. And right now, well, this is data from 2018. 17% of the city population is 55 or older. Just one other tidbit there is that over the next 10 years, we'll have an additional 15,000 residents that move into that cohort, just assuming they stay in the city and just age here in place in the city. And finally, this last slide just provides some project details of other senior housing developments that fall into that, under 7 units to the acre range. So you can see the names of the projects, the location, when they were built, and just other facts about those projects. And so just to summarize again, this is an ordinance change that would allow someone to apply for RM zoning. Again, it doesn't guarantee they would get it, but they could apply for RM zoning under the criteria that's being proposed by Mr. Moore. And that summarizes the application.
Okay, I'll go to the council first on questions. So any council members have questions?
I do, Mayor. So just to make sure I understand, Steve, all we're really doing, if this passes, is to open up certain specific projects to roads that are on 80-foot wide streets or instead of 100-foot wide streets. Is that right? That's
correct. And so maybe one way to look at that is right now on a road that's a 100-foot right of way, someone could already propose a senior type condo development under 7 units to the acre. They could also ask for something more dense than that. Under this proposal though, but under the code now, if they want to do that on an 80-foot right of way, it wouldn't be an option.
And I think I can read between the lines and see that Mr. Moore is saying he wants to build on an 80-foot wide road, and he will build within these parameters if we will allow a change to the ordinance so that he can build on an 80-foot wide road. Correct. Which raises the question in my mind, what is the purpose for the restriction to only roads that are 100 feet wide? Is it traffic? Is it public transit? Is it density? Is it because we don't want these kinds of units built? I mean, we have a requirement, and if we're going to change it, I think we need to review why we have the requirement to some extent.
Sure. So what I recall from when these were put in place, it's been about 5 years ago now that those standards were put in place. So part of the thought process was that the roads that are 100-foot right of way or larger tend to have transit. So think Redwood Road, 3500 South, 2700 West, 5600 West. So that's one consideration. You also tend to have services on streets like that. So again, thinking Redwood, 35th South, you have businesses. So you have people that are in close proximity to shopping. And so you're reducing travel distances, that sort of thing. And of course, because they're wider streets, you're going to have heavier traffic. So any new traffic generated from whether it's an apartment development or townhomes or what have you, would be, instead of driving through an established neighborhood, the impact is limited mostly to a road that's already a wider street instead of putting density in the middle of the neighborhood. So those were some of the considerations for the 100-foot right of way. And I believe Mr. Moore is looking at where there's the density limitation, and an 80-foot right of way could still be a 5-lane street, like say again 7200 West. That he was seeing it as maybe that's more of a compromise or a not as impactful development as say townhomes that are more dense or apartments.
An 80-foot right of way, that doesn't really bring it into a neighborhood so much. I'm looking at the map, and it's like, I guess 40th West is 80 feet and 48th West. I don't know that such development would be appropriate there, but then I don't know that it wouldn't. And then that brings up the next question. if it's okay to develop more broadly on 80-foot right-of-ways, do we really want to just limit it to these specific situations, or just say that you can apply for RM zoning on an 80-foot right-of-way? I mean, I don't have answers. I just have questions. So I'd like to hear from anybody else.
So I guess one of my concerns would be, let's say he wants to build on 7200 West. We already have a senior living on 7200 West that puts out a lot of traffic onto 31 and onto 72. It doesn't even really empty onto 72. So I can see the consequence of having more than one of these in an area. There's some blue vacant property that hasn't been asked for any development agreements that are inside of neighborhoods. And I just don't think I want to fight that fight every time in the middle of a subdivision. They're like, well, we're kind of close. So I would rather just leave it as it is. I think it's worked well for us.
If I may, maybe just one clarification. If a piece is within a neighborhood and is close to a street that's 80 feet but doesn't actually have access and frontage, then it would not be eligible. It would actually have to have frontage as well as access on that street.
Got it. Thank you.
But
I would say, though, that some of those streets are essentially still residential streets. I mean, they're just homes lined on both sides, you know, all the way up and down. I guess the question I have is, this request has been made and I didn't hear any justification for the change. It was like, just change, you know. I flipped a coin and I said, oh, well, let's do 80 feet instead of 100. You know, why not 75 or why not 86 and a half feet? I mean, there has to be, I know that their street widths are set, but the issues that were discussed previously in the council were fairly well thought through. And it seemed like there was justification for keeping them on these 100-foot right-of-ways. And I mean, if there's a justification for the change, I haven't heard it yet. I've heard a want, but not a need.
so if I may, and again, just in my purpose in these next statements would be just to convey what the applicant has made or has mentioned to staff. So again, just from the applicant's perspective, it would be that there's a demand for this type of housing. So for housing that's specifically geared towards seniors. So there's a demand for that. And from his perspective, the opportunities for doing this type of housing are very limited based on the current ordinance. And so again, from his perspective, this would provide at least a few more opportunities to apply for this kind of housing. So that's what I've heard from the applicant is just, again, when you look at, for example, the existing senior condo developments in the city, they've all been very successful and have, at the time at least, there were no vacancies or no units that were for sale. And so there's, at least from the developer's perspective, there's quite a demand for it.
I don't know, I guess Councilwoman Lang kind of took a lot of what I thought about, but I'm a little concerned to make this change and have it on our agenda next week without having an opportunity to maybe have staff go out and at least show me some examples, 4 or 5, half a dozen examples of how this would impact and where it would work and maybe where it wouldn't work as well. and kind of get a feel for that before we put this on our agenda for a regular meeting. In other words, oh, and by the way, senior housing, is it legal to have an age requirement?
It is. In fact,
It is?
it's the only legal form of discrimination is age based. So the federal government actually does allow that.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
I look at the two apartment complexes. They're not senior living, but they're apartment complexes in my neighborhood. They were both built with frontage on a much narrower street than the 100-foot and 80-foot that it shows right now. We've widened that street many times and eaten into the front end of both of those because they front on both streets, both 41st and 40th. And, if it's senior housing, I think they would be a little less traffic generating than the ones that we've got.
Possibly so. Remember that all they have to have is someone over 55 living there. It could still be a family.
Right.
With their one of the elderly parents that they're having there, but usually they aren't that big, are they? Are most of the senior living apartments where this age requirement's in place and would meet these requirements, are they 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom? Generally, what are they?
So the ones that I'm familiar with, size wise, they're somewhere in the 1,100 to say 15 to 1,600 square feet, and have it's probably more typical to have 2 bedrooms up to 3, but they tend to have more square footage and living space as opposed to bedrooms.
Yeah. And are all of them single level?
All of the ones that are under 7 units to the acre, yes. Now we do have some age restricted apartments that are higher density, but this proposal wouldn't allow that. It would, under this proposal, if you're under 7 to the acre, then, or 7 units to the acre, it's likely going to be a single level type development, again, of those similar to the 4 that I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Steve, can I ask, what is the setback, the rear setback or the side setback that would be associated with these RM? I mean, what kind of impact are they going to have on the neighborhood on either side of them?
Sure. So all of these have been done as a PUD, and in a PUD setting, the setbacks you can be flexible that way. But typically in a front yard, we've tried to not do anything less than 20 feet for a front yard setback. And rear yards have been somewhere in the 20 to, I think we've gone as low in some cases as 15 in a PUD, but it's typically 20 feet is what we try to hold to in a rear yard. And again, with a PUD setting, there's some flexibility that way.
Okay.
I guess there is some reasonableness to maybe have this in some areas. I'm not sure that the definition of just the 80-foot wide will work, because I look at some of these streets, I question whether that's really reasonable. I don't know, some of them I say, well, 4100 South with it being redeveloped and buses down it, maybe so, but I can't quite tell where all of them are, but there are a couple of them look like, I don't know. And I'm not sure about 7200 West, because that one, boy, that is, a lot of that is right up to the curb. Although there's one there already.
But I think it was approved before we made the changes.
It
Yeah.
was. In
Yeah.
fact, all of the existing projects were approved before our current code.
And I guess that's the question with those four. What impact has that had on traffic, and is it easy to get in and out of?
Well, I will say, and I don't have the numbers handy, but generally speaking, senior development, whether it be condos or apartments, on a per unit basis, tend to generate less traffic than just a typical single family home. So
Yeah.
while the density is more than a typical single family neighborhood, the number of trips per unit tend to be less. Because again, while it's possible you could have kids, it's less likely when you have mostly seniors there, and so you just tend to have not as many people per household, and so and just not as many trips.
What was the percentage that had to be 55 and older? Have someone in there? It's not
So-
100%.
Right. It's 80% of the units have to have at least one person that's 55 or older.
So 20% could be full-on families with no restrictions.
Correct. Although the Mr. Moore, again, according to his research, the ones that he looked at in the city were almost 100% by seniors. So while there's that requirement that it be 80% in practice, at least from his research, it's higher than that.
So why don't we set it at 90?
Well, and the reason there is that the 80% is that federal standard. So we couldn't have it be
Okay.
more.
We couldn't
more-
have it any higher than 80.
Right. We couldn't have it be more
Okay.
restrictive than the federal standard.
Well, clearly I'm not well versed on federal standards, so.
So I think that the question comes back to, we made this change. Did we mean it? Did we make a mistake? Did we not consider this? I think to the mayor's first point that he made is, what's a good reason to change it? Other than somebody wants to do a development and is trying to narrowly tailor a change to the ordinance so that his development can go forward. And of course, others that are this very similar could go forward too. And, I don't like, as a rule, going back and just reviewing things and saying, well, we made this change, but somebody doesn't like it. So let's rehash why we did it. And I guess I have to go back and read the minutes and see what the discussion was 5 years ago.
As I listen to this, certainly would I like to see some more of this over 55 housing in West Valley? And the answer is yes. But I'm not sure about using a definition of the 80-foot wide. I think there are places where on an 80-foot wide street, maybe it makes sense because it's, not in the middle of a subdivision, but maybe some of these others, it doesn't make sense. And so I know we need a clear definition, but I don't know. I just a little nervous by using that definition without actually driving each of those streets and saying, yeah, this makes sense here. And others where I say, it doesn't, without actually seeing it.
And
that's why I wanted staff to drive me around and show me those.
And then we're looking at creep. If we just say, okay, this section of 4100 is okay, but 4800 west is not, 7200 west is not, but this part of 3100 south is, then we're just going to be facing applications 5 years from now that, well, you made this change so far, so let's extend it to the next parcel and the next parcel. And we've seen this with commercial development and everything else. If we want to keep things the way they are, we can't change them.
Of course, there is a natural tendency for creep to take place, especially as you get built out. And I've watched that, especially on 5600 West, where there used to be a lot of houses and they're turning into businesses. And the same thing even on some portions of 3500 South. And a little bit, and we've had this discussion before on 4100 South, where we say the creep of commercial, retail to the intersections, the major intersections is okay, but not along the rest of it.
Right.
And so
That's why we as a council get to pass ordinances and say, no, we don't want this, or it's going to be delayed by our obstinance, or however they want to view it.
Well, I think it's more of what makes sense for the growth of the city and where does it fit? Not because someone wants to build it there, but because it makes sense to do it in that area. And that can change over time.
Mhm.
It really can. For example, when I moved out here 40 years ago, to even talk about putting more commercial on 4100 South didn't make sense. It was farms and houses. It was all rural. But that changed. And maybe another 40 years into the future, we'll be tearing out houses along 41st and putting in additional lanes in both directions. You know, it changes over time. The question in my mind, unless I can see that it makes sense, I'm okay with where we're at, but I'm willing to at least look at, are there some areas along some of those major streets that make sense? So we could have additional senior housing. I'm not saying yes, but I'm saying I'm willing to look at it. Maybe no one else is interested, so it'll maybe just be Steve and me driving around, but Steve Pastrick, by the way. But anyone else is welcome to tour that as well. I'm just not sure I can get it done by next week. I do have a few
Yeah,
other meetings.
I don't mind putting this off for a couple of weeks and giving people
Oh.
time to really look at it.
I don't know if a
I don't-
couple weeks, but 1 week, that'll be a 2-week window, just to make me feel more comfortable. I don't know if anyone else needs any time, but
And if I may, Mayor, and maybe Nicole can address this, but I believe the item's been noticed, and so it may be that we need to continue it next week, but I'll let Nicole respond to that.
That's correct, Steve. So this has been noticed for a public hearing. So we could just take a vote
Okay.
for continuance to a specific date, and we wouldn't have to renotice it at that point.
oh, okay. If that works, then fine. Now, I've done a lot of talking and several of you have been fairly quiet. Any concerns? Okay. Well, and the issue of continuance is not a requirement. It's if a majority of the council feel comfortable and want to move ahead, that's viable. This doesn't stop anything. And I don't know, maybe Steve will call me up tomorrow and maybe not though. He actually does have other work to do, not like me. So, okay. Anything else on that?
Nope. Mayor, I've just got to let you know, I have to jump off for a minute. I'm having a computer problem. So I'll be back as soon as I get it fixed.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you for making us aware of that. So I guess what we need to have is a long introduction on the next item on our agenda, which would be application Z-9 2020. This is for property west of 5600 West at 2454 South. And that includes ordinance 2102 and resolution 2101. That's for a zone change and a development agreement on that property. And Mr. Pastrick, is yours, although this is an easier one, I think. More straightforward, I should say.
Great. Thank you. So I'll share my screen here again. So this property is, there's two parcels in question here. They total just over 20 acres. The current zoning is agricultural, and the request here is to change the zoning to the M zone or the manufacturing zone. The proposal would involve, or at least the development proposal here would involve these two pieces as well as the parcel to the east, which is already zoned manufacturing. So that's why it's not part of the zone change. If I can go, I'll go to the next image here. So this concept shows the what's proposed on the property. And so altogether, it's about 38 acres that's proposed for development. And the proposal is a very large distribution warehouse building. So very similar to what's been developed directly to the west of this property in the Mountain View Industrial Park, as well as the Ara Industrial Park. So this would just be an extension really of more light industrial development to the east. So just by way of some background, I've included some photos here. So along the south side of the property to the west is the street 2540 South. It's a fairly new street. This road you can see right now dead ends at the west side of the property in question. And we'll talk a little bit more about that road here in a minute. This next image just shows from where the road dead ends looking to the north. So you can see on the left side of this image is the new Mountain View Industrial Park. So this is just barely finished within the last month or so, building on the left, and then of course the vacant property on the right's the one in question. This is the easternmost building in the adjoining industrial park, and so what's proposed on this property would be very similar. So just a very large distribution warehouse. This last slide I think is helpful because it shows some road extensions that are planned this year. And so the property in question you can see here is you have these areas here. Hopefully you can see my cursor moving here. And you can see in yellow, the plan is to extend 2540 to the east, as well as once it gets to the eastern boundary of the property here, or that we're discussing, it would then move north and tie in at 2400 South, which would then connect to 5600 West. So this is this road connection that the city actually will be constructing in the summer of this year, would provide a really important connection from 2540 to ultimately out to 5600 West. And the plan is to eventually also connect or provide a connection down to Parkway, but that would be a future phase. And so why this road connection is important addresses one of the needs in the development agreement. So associated with this zone change is a development agreement that does several things. So first of all, it would require the dedication of the right-of-way that the city will need to construct this road. So the property that is proposed for the distribution warehouse also includes the area that the city needs for the road. And so basically as part of this development agreement, the developer would dedicate the right-of-way that the city needs for the road. Another point in this is that while the city is constructing the road, the developer would be responsible for the utilities. And so what happens in the agreement is the developer or excuse me, the city would build the road and the utilities, and then the developer would reimburse the city for the cost of the utilities. We've tried it before where the developer would first put in the utilities, and then we have our contractor come in and do the road, but then that process ended up being not very streamlined and created some problems. So it'd be much easier to just have one contractor do the work and then have the city get reimbursed. And then finally, we also included in the development agreement some design standards for the new industrial building, just so that it would be comparable to some of the neighboring industrial buildings. So that summarizes the application.
So the yellow is the proposed roads for the future, yellow with the red borders.
That's correct.
What are the light green ones? Or I don't know what those are. Obviously, they're along the canal there. I guess that's the canal.
The aqua colored ones.
Yeah, I'm actually, so this drawing I received from Public Works, and I'm not 100% sure the purpose of those kind of aqua colored lines, but to your point, Mayor, the yellow line represents where the new road would be constructed.
And the black lines are Mountain View Corridor, the north-south.
That's correct.
But there's not a whole lot of, will there be much space between where this future road goes north and south and Mountain View Corridor? Will there be space in there for businesses, or is that essentially taken up?
It's essentially taken up because if you recall, there's the power transmission lines. So you have west of the Mountain View Corridor is the power transmission.
Okay. So once that road goes in, there will be no further development on the east side and west of Mountain View Corridor.
Right, through this section, that's right.
Yeah, right here. Okay, thank you.
Steve,
Yes, sir.
on your last slide, with all of the roads and the outlines and everything else, where is the property that we're talking about?
Very good. So if you see where, so there's the road extension that's moving east to, or from extending to the east, the one that runs east and west. So the property would be directly north of the eastern extension of the road. So that's the property we're talking about, is that area directly north of the eastern extension.
And it's outlined in red there. It's almost like two boxes on top of each other.
Exactly. Those two boxes or two square areas are the areas that are up for rezoning.
And where is the property that has already been developed that's just east of them?
Right. So if you look at those two red squares, the property that has already been developed is directly west. And so again, it's very new. And so this particular photo doesn't show that, but if you look at the very first image in the PowerPoint, you can see some building footprints that are on that first aerial image. That's where those buildings have been completed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Hearing no further comments. Thank you, Steve, and we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. And that is, let's see, we're down to resolutions now. And so this one is Resolution 21-02, approve a master services agreement with Ring Central Inc. for telecommunication services. And who's going to do this?
Mayor Ken Cushing's going to present this item. from our
Oh.
IT department.
Okay, oh, there.
Yeah, you can see him there in the
He-
EOC
He's,
window.
he's standing way, way back from the camera, so I can, even with my glasses, all I can see is a figure, so. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Ken Cushing, Information Technology. We've been looking at new phone systems for the last couple of years. Our system has been aging and starting to run into different issues. With the pandemic and also with the earthquake, we noticed even more of a need to have a type of system that isn't necessarily anchored to City Hall, but it is very mobile and malleable to different types of needs. And so we've been actually using RingCentral in the police department amongst their recruitment group since last March. And it's been a great system for them. In fact, I've had 0 complaints. And so we are looking now at expanding that and going citywide with it. For the first year, because of the needs for people working from home and just wanting to be prepared for any type of emergency, we're for the first year, we're going to pay for that with emergency funding, but then it will need to be paid for the maintenance on that from thereafter out of the budget. The big advantages to it is that we won't necessarily need physical phones for most employees. They'll be able to use software either on their desktop or on their mobile device. And the functionality will work identical as if they had a physical phone. So any of the calling trees that come in to the city phone numbers will still disperse to the same extensions. But rather than there being a physical phone, they can use the application on their mobile phone or on their desktop, which just creates a lot better way for us to respond in an emergency, especially when we don't really know for sure what those circumstances might be. And the RingCentral has the highest ratings when it comes to support and reliability, and their mobile app, which is something we really focused on in looking at this. So with that, we recommend moving to RingCentral citywide, and that's of course not just phones at City Hall, but phones at all of the locations that the employees use throughout the city, which numbers into about 600 extensions that different users are using right now. Do you have any questions?
Well, you made the statement that it almost sounded like they won't have a desk phone.
Yeah, but it will be, in reality, it'll be kind of like a virtual desk phone. So some places will still have to have a physical phone, like say the front counter at the fitness center. There's multiple people that might be there. The phone will ring and anybody will have to be picking it up. But for most people, the scenario that we have is they're always sitting at their desk, and the piece of software that they use would work just identical to the way a physical phone would. There's other people, say like in courts, that are always using a headset to answer the phone. Rather than have a headset that connects to a physical phone, they can have a headset that just uses Bluetooth into their computer, and still operate and answer calls out of calling queues exactly the way they would from a physical phone.
Well, okay. So what's different from that? Why don't we just give them cell phones?
Well, a lot of people do have city issued cell phones, but the cost of, say, of adding cell phones is more than just having the extensions in this phone system. And so for those that do have city issued cell phones, yes, or even personal cell phones, they could put the app on there and be able to have their extension show up. So in other words, if they're able to call somebody else in City Hall or somebody outside of City Hall, the number that would show up is the number that we have assigned to them for the city rather than the number on their cell phone. And that allows them not to have to give away their cell phone numbers, and the ones that they have published are other city phone numbers. I hope that makes sense.
Well, I followed what you said, I think. I'm not an IT specialist, so.
Let me see if I understood it, Mayor. Where I have a cell phone with a cell phone number, if I were to go on the Ring Central, if somebody called my extension in the city, which now rings phone, but just gives me a message, I could actually answer it on my cell phone as a city extension.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, okay.
And
A lot of money.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, it's just a lot of money, I said.
It is, but honestly, the amount of money to put maintenance on all of the phone switches we have throughout the city on aging hardware is just as much as that. And in addition to that, if say in the earthquake, if we were to have lost this building, that hardware we would have lost, and we wouldn't have had a phone system. Where in this scenario, say with Ring Central, they have multiple locations throughout states. And so if they were able to lose one of their centers, one of the other centers we just picked that up. It's completely redundant, and we wouldn't experience a loss in service. And
So we could access it all from our mobile devices.
correct. And that's really what's important here, is that we're able to respond to different emergencies, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's an earthquake, or whatever the next thing that comes around the corner.
Well, what's the impact, if you do have an earthquake or something? A lot of people get on cell phones and, it gets tied up. Kind of like 9/11, the system almost crashed because everyone was on the phone.
Yes,
So how will that work in an emergency situation?
and honestly, in almost any emergency for a while, that's typically what happens, is it taxes the phone system, communication systems. Mostly though, if we had, that's another advantage here really, is most of our service is going to be through the internet connecting to Ring Central. And so let's say we had a local emergency, but that was tying up all the cell phone towers, but not the internet. Well, all of our phone systems would still continue to operate just fine because we'd be connecting through the internet to that.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions?
So the phone system we have now, how much a year are we paying for that?
That one's actually been off of any kind of service contract now for 3 years. To be honest,
Okay.
hasn't been a very good thing for us. And we run into some issues that have been very hard to solve because of aging hardware.
And then does this total amount include what is being used at the police department right now?
Yes.
Okay,
And
so
all of the
whatever
fire-
they're paying would wrap into this.
Yes, and the cultural center and all, but they're paying right now for Ring Central. Is that?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying. If the
yeah, we
police are
will-
paying for Ring Central,
And we will cover their costs as well.
but is it in this amount here or is it an additional amount?
It is not an additional amount. This will cover all of their extensions as well.
Okay,
So the amount of new budget required is somewhere between the amount shown here and whatever it is for,
Well,
The
the
police
number of
department.
phones, honestly, that they're using for the recruitment department, I believe is only 25 phones, or we're talking about, what, 650 phones here? So it's a pretty small amount.
but you mentioned the
Okay.
Cultural Celebration Center too.
Yeah, well, what I meant to say is that we're going to be covering all of the phones in the city
Oh.
with this system.
Okay. Not hearing any further comments. Then we'll go to the next item, which is Resolution 21-03, approve the payment of costs to bury certain overhead lines on 4100 South. And I see Dan Johnson's name up here, so there he is.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. So Dan Johnson, city engineer. So we have before you a resolution authorizing the expenditure of $43,581 to CenturyLink. So this is for the 4100 South reconstruction project. And as you'll recall, we requested the burial of certain aerial crossings that cross through the middle of the road. We got rid of quite a few of those that are overhead services to individual homes. And in some cases, we buried some CenturyLink lines that were parallel to the roadway for a period of the road. And so CenturyLink did this work just under the understanding that they would send us an invoice after the work was completed. They estimated before the project that it was to be around $71,000, and it worked out better for us that the actual costs are about $43,000. And so these are expenditures we've already been planning on, and it's not, there's an existing budget for this work. We just need the authorization to spend the money. So that's all I have, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions? Hearing none. Then we'll move on. Thanks, Dan. We'll go on to Resolution 21-04, approve the purchase of 24 vehicles from Ken Garf Ford. Looks like Eric Madsen is on with us.
Yes, Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Eric Madsen, Fleet Manager. And I'm bringing forth the annual replacement list for the light duty vehicles for this year. We've held off for a while to see where we came in, and Wayne has give us the authorization to go out and get bids and then bring them in front of you guys and see if we have any questions. We're going to buy the majority, like every year, goes to the police department, but we're doing some animal control trucks, some couple of the police administration vehicles, or excuse me, fire administration, a public works vehicle, and I think that's about it. There are 24 vehicles, and these are all Ford vehicles.
Is that everything?
Yes, sir.
Which ones on the list are not the police and fire? Do you have that information, or if you don't have it, just.
Well, I mean, there's 3 animal control trucks. And and 3 public works. The rest of the vehicles are PD minus the 2 Explorers for fire.
Okay. All right.
Kind of
Thank
a
you.
backwards way to get there, but I got it. Any
So
questions?
I have a question. I have one. So you have an F-150 truck for evidence department, is that right?
That's what Evidence has. We're buying them a Transit Connect. the small,
Oh, so I'm getting confused as to what is what then. Okay, so I have one paper that has all the miles and the years, and so that's one paper on here.
okay,
And then the next one says remodels and how much the base price is, how much the upfitting is.
yep. Karen, maybe make sure that's all the way to the bottom on your cursor, and it should,
Yeah.
it is, brings you up the makes, the models.
Yeah, so on the one that's got the remodel, says remodels on the far left-hand side, and then price and upfitting.
Yeah, so the remodel is what we're buying.
Okay, yes.
when
So
you
the
go
second
down
one
that-
down to the far right
Evidence.
says evidence. Is
Yeah,
that true or?
yeah, I mean, it says police evidence. They're driving a F-150 now. And we're
Okay.
gonna buy them the smaller vans. They
Oh, okay.
wanted something that they can travel down the road and not have to worry about things flying out of the back of the truck. It's a
Well,
smaller,
and that's why,
more fuel efficient vehicle.
okay. So I'm just not comprehending off this list what's what. Because I was going to say, I think instead of just a regular cab, they need a crew cab to put their stuff inside the truck.
Right.
So maybe these two forms.
Yeah, and I can't see, I'm doing this off my laptop and I can't see exactly what you're seeing.
Yeah,
I
it's under the
apologize.
heading 2021 replacement list. So let me see.
Eric, yeah, it's the list you were thinking of earlier that you're listing the vehicles that are actually being replaced. They don't necessarily match up against the categories vehicle for vehicle.
Oh, I apologize.
Well, that's okay. I've got the whole list here of what you're replacing because it's got the year and the miles.
Okay.
Mayor, I
Anyway.
also have Russ Willardson here who may have some clarification.
So Eric, on that sheet that Karen's looking at, the last column is the disposition. I believe that's what we're going to do with those vehicles, with the old vehicles. So that F-150 would go to evidence for their use, and then all the ones that say TNT will be auctioned off. So some of them will be retained and replace even older vehicles where the departments are still using.
Okay.
Does that make
So
more
my
sense?
question. Yeah.
I thought we were just transporting a lot of explosive.
So I guess my question is, there's few of these, the F-150s that only have 60,000 or less miles on them, 70,000 or less. So obviously those ones with the low mileage are going to other departments,
Right.
but why are we buying Fords? Why are we buying the same thing when we're getting rid of them at such low mileage?
Well, I think you're seeing, we got they're 06s and 08s.
But they only have like 60,000 miles on them.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Karen, I've messed up on this. I can't see what you're looking at.
What
Sorry.
I'm looking at. Okay. Maybe I'll just call you later and
Yeah, I'm sorry.
figure it out. Nope, that's
Aaron,
okay.
I can tell you what's going on with those and the criteria in a general sense. And of course, feel free to talk with Eric later on the individual vehicles. But when we put a vehicle up for replacement on the replacement list, it basically is considered under three, at least, different categories. Eric might be thinking of some more. One is mileage. One is condition. Sometimes they just have problems with them, whether it's rusted through or there's some sort of mechanical or recall issue that doesn't make sense to keep them. Or the other thing is just plain service history, meaning some vehicles just plain have more problems than others. They got ridden hard or whatever. So when Eric comes up with the replacement list, he puts together all of those considerations on each vehicle and then makes the determination of, are they now to the point where we should either replace them totally, or could we get more use out of them by transferring them to another department? And then that's how that determination is made, just generally. Feel free, again, if you got specific questions on the individual vehicles, yeah, Eric can talk about them. But when you see a vehicle with 60,000 miles and it looks like we're replacing it, that's why. It could have other issues with it. It could have had service issues. It could be, okay, it's time to replace it, but there's still some use of it in the other departments, that sort of thing. So that's on the general sense why they get put on the list.
Okay, and the other department we're transferring it to may not have as hard of a use of it, so it'll last longer for their use?
Right, and sometimes the other departments, and this is what happens a lot of times with these, what we call lunar vehicles, low use, not on the replacement list vehicles, they'll have an even older vehicle that also isn't on the replacement list at all. And so we're replacing that even older second or third generation vehicle with a second generation vehicle, so to speak.
Okay.
Wayne, we have a warranty for this, like maybe like 100,000 miles, and we can replace and send it back to the company, and we can get some kind of money or something back. Is it kind of like?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, Tom. All the vehicles we buy have at least a normal manufacturer's warranty on them. Usually that's about a 3-year, as opposed to longer than that. But yes, to answer your question.
Yeah, the drivetrain is a 100,000 miles or 6 years, whatever comes first.
So that warranty we will pay less money, or we don't have to pay any money, or what is that, the warranty there?
Yeah, we absolutely take advantage of the warranties wherever we can, Tom, for whether that's just going back in and getting them fixed or whatever the best solution might be.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I now have the list up, Karen. So when you call me, I'll be ready. I'm sorry.
Just a simple question that we're purchasing 24 vehicles, and when you talk about the disposition of vehicles.
Yes, sir.
TNT and then some going to other departments. There's like 30 of them there.
Well, what it is too, Mayor, I apologize. I should explain that. Yeah. Wayne came to the council a few months back.
Yeah.
And we were okay to buy 7 Camrys due to, we had a whole bunch of total losses. So there was 7 cars that are on the list in addition to the 24.
Yeah.
On this issue paper.
Yeah, because there were 20 that were being auctioned and then 11 that were transferring to other departments, 31 total. So right. 7 and 24.
Yeah. So that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Hearing none. Thank you, Eric. We'll move on to the next item on here. We will actually take 2 items together since they are very, very closely tied together. It is 2105 for the master tax exempt lease purchasing agreement for purchase of computers for the police department. This is the annual 1/4 of all the computer equipment being replaced, and then 2106, which is the authorization actually to lease those, purchase them using that. So one is if you will, a source of funding, and the other is what we're going to use that money for, I guess. Is that a good way to put it, Jim?
That's very good. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, if not, you clarify it. So we'll take those 2 items together. Jim, go ahead.
Sure. Jim Welch, Finance Director for the city. Mayor, you covered that very well. This is part of the regular process of replacement of computers as they become older and outdated. The chief will probably address. And this is a lease with US Bank. We have a long a history of very competitive rates with, and they're very accommodating for these needs on, these are technically small leases. And for this rate this year, the rate will be 1.75%, and it'll be a 4-year lease. As you had mentioned, we usually have a 4-year rotation. Quarterly payments, those payments will be about $7,000 for a total of $29,000 a year. Periodically, the question when we bring these up to the council comes up, why do we do this on a lease rather than pay for it in cash outright? And a lot of it has to do with the budgetary requirements and constraints of the police department. They have this built into their budget, and it just rolls from year to year, and they're able to manage that with their allocated cash flow. And therefore, a budget opening for the debt service is not needed. However, there will be a budget modification just to reflect the purchase of those computers. So we feel like these are very good terms. As you know, rates have been very low on every type of lending. And for this purchase, they remain less than 2%. There's no origination fees. There's no other expenses other than the monthly payments with that interest charge.
Questions?
Yep, my same question. I think, is it senseless to pay 1.75% when we're only earning less than 0.5% probably for what we have in our general fund or wherever to our savings? I would really like to see us get caught up on all these leases, get ahead of it and have it in the budget instead of giving away that 1.7%. I think if we looked at all of our leases, it'd be a bigger number of what we're paying out than we realize. And we're definitely not making it up with what we have in savings. And if we took and did an initial bam, get all these caught up, and then the police could just put away their $35,000 every year and use that to purchase them every time instead of spending this extra percentage on leasing.
Maybe we could get that put together for our strategic plan meeting, and kind of a bubble chart idea from what we looked at many times before, and just see if we can look at our financing and find a way to trim things up and maybe go more on a cash basis on some things. I'd be interested in that too. But I think that's a little bit longer discussion than typically we would have in this meeting.
Correct. Yep, I'm good with that.
I think one item to remember, though, if I'm not mistaken, Jim, in order to make the conversion to that, you would have to pay for the computers up front, and there would be a one-time increase because you couldn't spread it over the 4 years.
Yes, and we've done that with various other leasing instruments over the years. There would be a pretty good chunk that you'd have to come up with, of course, for a couple of years, because this is a 4-year rotation, and the computers are expected to run out of their useful lives every 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
but I still see the advantage of getting ahead of it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, sorry. Anything else?
I think that's pretty well it for the financing portion.
Okay.
So Jim, can you put us together a chart of everything we lease so we know what it would take to get on top of it and how much we're spending?
Sure, I have that already prepared, and I can bring that at the strategic planning retreat, or however Mr. Pyle would like me to present it to you. Okay.
And not just the computers, but everything we do these small leases for, or leases for. Thank you.
So Karen, you're saying everything except buildings, basically?
Yes. Yeah, not things we bond for, but things we lease. Because we have a lot of police equipment, computers, fire. I mean, we have a lot of things we purchase on a lease instead of just outright cash.
Okay. Hearing no further questions, comments. That covered both of those resolutions, Mr. Welch, is that correct?
Unless you have any other questions about the computer purchase, that would cover them.
Okay. Then with that, then we'll go to resolution 21-07. This is to amend our interlocal cooperation agreement between our city and the county for meals and transportation at the Harmon Senior Recreation Center. Oh, I see a picture. There she is, Nancy Day. You're on mute, so I don't know what.
How's that?
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
That's, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This resolution is really an amendment of a resolution that was passed last summer. And it's, if you recall, an interlocal agreement for Salt Lake County. They pay us that $18,786 for the meals program at the Harmon Senior Recreation Center. The original agreement was set for 1 year. This is an extension for 2 years, so it will go through January 1st of 2022. So that's really all this is an extension of the existing agreement.
Did the number of meals served stay basically the same during the pandemic?
They actually went up. And so, yes. So the meals themselves, the product that comes in, we report to them how many we need. And that's separate. This helps pay for staffing and that kind of thing to help us serve those meals. But yes, they did go up, Mayor, quite a bit.
Okay. Hearing no further questions, then we'll go to communications. And interestingly enough, it's Parks and Recreations. So Nancy's already online with us.
Wonderful. So can you see the screen with the presentation?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. So yes, I'm thrilled to be able to go over what our 2020 year was like. And with the pandemic, of course, there were some challenges. This picture that you see on the front screen was not from 2020, as we had to modify a lot of things. You'll kind of notice that a little bit through the presentation as we go. But I wanted to talk a little bit about our staff. You know, all of the divisions that are already listed there. That's an integral part of Parks and Recreation, with our citizens being in the center of everything that we do. Each division is an essential piece of the puzzle to just really have a great community. So we've got our 57 full-time employees, almost 300 part-time and seasonals. Those fluctuate a little bit, and about 7,800 volunteer hours as well, which is down some, obviously, from 2019. Some things just couldn't be done this year. But I want to give a shout out to my staff, because honestly, they do an amazing job. And when during the pandemic, there were times where certain things weren't allowed to be done, or the fitness center was closed, we were able to bring some of those staff out to help in parks and other areas. So just a great staff. I'm truly grateful for them. So I wanted to talk just briefly about some of the virtual things that we did. This is really just the tip of the iceberg. We really wanted to stay connected with the community, let them know that we're there for them, and we want to continue services. The picture at the top is a video that was done by Jeremy Urkala, our food and beverage manager. This is his famous macaroni and cheese recipe. So if you really want to learn how to make it, you can still get to the video on Facebook and see how to do that. If you look to the right a little further down, you'll see a couple other videos that were done that were also posted on social media. Brian Abney from The Ridge showing some chipping drills and things that people can try at home. And then we've got Paul from Stonebridge next to that, and he's doing some workout and fitness kind of routines to stay fit and be ready for golf. Directly below them, we have Kent Jensen, our park superintendent, and that beautiful planter box that he's showing. He has a video to show people how to make that. And then to the left, you see we had our virtual program for our Veterans Day program that was there. Below that is our annual Christmas lighting was done virtually. And then Santa came inside the fitness center and told a story to all the kids to be able to enjoy as well. So those, like I said, are just the tip of the iceberg. Staying in touch was critical to our staff. If you look to the right, that Spark, that's our summertime play, arts and recreation for kids program. This is the program that is typically done in the parks with the free lunch program that's provided. This year it had to be modified. So a lot of the activities or crafts were done virtually, weekly for the public to be able to enjoy, as well as some of the fitness classes you see down below. That's one of our instructors doing a virtual class out of her home. And then you see a couple pictures here from our senior recreation center, the Harmon Center. The top one is our car bingo. That was a hit. That was done every week till it got too cold, but the seniors loved that. Down below, some of the staff asked city employees as well as others to put together some ideas so that they could take these care packages to the seniors' homes at Christmas time, and it was overwhelming response. It was just great. A lot of seniors made things too that they really wanted to share and send out to the other seniors. So that was really good. So I want to jump in from there into our Harmon Senior Recreation Center. And as you asked, Mayor, our meals did go up by about 1,000, so roughly 15%. And that's huge. Also, we received new seniors that wanted to, over 100 that wanted to be a part of the Harmon Senior Recreation Center, not just for the meals, but when we eventually do reopen. The participants and the transportation, those numbers are obviously down because the facility's been closed since the pandemic started. So we were unable to do those things. And it was a real challenging year. Our staff feels so strongly about those that they serve, our senior population in our city. Zenda has been with the city for 29 years now, and each year they lose roughly 5 to 6 seniors each year that are regulars that come to the Harmon Senior Recreation Center. Last year in 2020, they lost 20, so significantly higher, but only one was due to COVID. The others, we feel, are probably related in other ways. The social isolation is extreme, and a lot of the seniors feel like they want to almost give up. And what they found through studies is actually social isolation increases the mortality risk just as much as things like smoking or obesity or other factors. So the staff do everything that they can to really help this population that's so at risk. And you can see Eileen, one of the staff members in the bottom right. All the staff would dress up from time to time for different events. They would do things like name that tune when they came to get their meals. So, you know, the picture above that was a progressive lunch. They went to 3 different parks, and at each park they got different parts of their meals. And then Mayor, you're in the top left corner there. That was for our Veterans Day. The mayor came out and helped hand out gifts to the veterans. So those are all really important elements the staff really tried to do. And that's another reason the seniors were coming for the meals for sure, but they were coming for more of that social interaction as well.
Nancy, since you're on the seniors,
yes,
are any of these items that you've been doing this year because of COVID, items that maybe we should continue even when things go back to normal to reach out to seniors in their homes?
I think that's a very good idea, Mayor. And of course, you know, we need to look at the staffing. For example, they do weekly wellness checks right now. They call every week to all of the seniors, and it can take 4 or 5 hours to do that. I know that pre-COVID, they would do that for the seniors that they hadn't seen for a while anyway. But I definitely think some of the delivery of some of the packages The bingo, of course, will come indoors. But there are other things that I think Zenda and her staff could absolutely still continue with, and we will evaluate that for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the Family Fitness Center, moving right along here, and the outdoor Centennial pool that we did acquire in 2020. So we were able to do, the staff did a patron satisfaction survey. You can see that it was 100% satisfied or better. People were really excited that we offered something, you know, and that we followed exceptional protocols and cleanliness to keep them safe and opened where we could. We did get some comments on the higher end, didn't have as many extremely satisfied because the weight room wasn't open yet, or their favorite treadmill was one that was, you know, kind of closed off so that we could keep that social distancing. Those were things that the staff really couldn't avoid, but we are hoping to open more of the free weights and more of the cardio the first part of February, or by the middle of February at the very least. Annual facility use, of course, is down. The fitness center was closed for 2 months, and the programs were canceled, and many still have extreme modifications. Even when we were able to open the outdoor pool certain days, we had to maintain a 50% capacity. So we had to turn people away at times on that. So that was a little rough. Program participants, however, stayed pretty close. They're actually up a little bit. I attribute that because pre-COVID, our program numbers were increased. We had a lot more in the programs that we were offering. So they were able to kind of stay where they needed to stay, which is a good sign for things to come. And then, of course, the revenue was also down during 2020 because of the pandemic. You know, fees not being collected, whether they were memberships or drop-in fees because of closures and the programs being canceled and whatnot. Some of the additions, of course, we acquired the outdoor pool, edutainment, dinosaur quarry. So you'll be able to see this in the spring. We will be doing a ribbon cutting for an outdoor area for the edutainment center. If you've driven up 3100 South, you've seen it fenced in. John Rock and Mr. Piles, interns, helped us with that. So we're really excited about finishing that up as the weather permits. And then the last one, the energy efficiency project, that's also with the help of John Rock and Lewis Young, you know, in helping us with our HVAC and water heating elements. It won't be done till this spring, so we won't probably see too much savings in this fiscal year, but we will down the road, which will be great. So the word of the year was modifications for Parks and Recreation. We had to modify a lot of stuff, but I'm so proud of my staff to still be able to offer programs and offer things to our community. So the new program formats, instead of doing leagues for our youth sports, we did camps, we did clinics. We were able to follow the proper protocols and offer something to them. I talked about the summer lunches already. They were at the schools. So our movie in the park, we did 3 movie in the parks. The picture you see in the middle is actually from the June movie in the park. It's an outfield area at Centennial Park. So Jason Erickson went out there. He marked all of these circles that were 10 feet apart so the families could go and sit in those, follow the social distancing. The screen was in the infield, and it worked. And so we were able to get 3 movies in the summer and follow the protocols. The adult leagues and tournaments had modifications. You probably remember me talking about the 2 national softball tournaments that we brought in, which were handled very well. And they were very happy with our facilities and with how they were treated. Loved being close to the hotels, the restaurants, the airport, worked out great. We had a successfully hosted USA Swim Meet at the fitness center this last summer. And then the golf leagues, some of them did well, some of them were a little rougher, but a lot of them did okay. And we used for the tournaments, the tee time formats for the tournaments that we could hold. We couldn't do a shotgun format. So that was how we were able to make that happen. Then we have all the virtual options, of which I've already spoken about many of those. And there were many more. And so that worked out well, as well as it could with the modifications that we had. And then the social media, we used our social media a lot as an information source to let people know about social distancing, what was happening in the parks and at the facilities, and really trying to engage them and keep them coming back to that. So now moving on to our golf courses. The top diagram is for our Players Pass revenue that we show you each year. And if you look at the bottom, well, let's look at the 2019-20, right? So last year's numbers. Our annual fee was down a little bit at that $244,539. The reason for that is when people really start coming out and buying those was when COVID hit. And they weren't sure. The golf course was closed for a couple of weeks, and then it was walking only for a couple of weeks. And a lot of people just didn't know what to expect. So our Player Pass revenue was down as far as the annual fee goes. But then if you look at the green fees, that went back up. The people that had the Players Passes were playing more. We were lucky and able to keep the courses open the rest of the summer. Cart fee was down a little bit. Again, we weren't using the carts for about a month when it was closed and it was walking only. So that hurt us, not by much, just a little bit, but overall revenue went up from the year previous. So that's good news there. With the rounds, tournaments, and revenues, you can see the numbers there. They all dropped some, from the year previous for obvious reasons. Number of tournaments, you see that there were 41 between the two courses. In 2019, there were 97. It just was not an option for us. Food and beverage was hit really hard. There's 32 events between golf and non-golf events. In 2019, there was 202. So a big difference there. We're really hoping this summer and fall particularly that we're going to be able to see all of that come back as it was before with that. And then Stonebridge, the end of September, they were able to host the Utah Senior Championship. So that was really good. The Ridge operated some of their weekly leagues. So that was nice that we could continue some of those services. Golf maintenance. So weather was an issue for us this last summer. March, April, and May. So the spring months were the third driest on record. And then May was the fourth warmest May on record, and August was the warmest August on record. So there were some challenges for sure. A couple of things at the Ridge. One of the things they did is, since the golf course was closed for a little bit of time, as soon as the pandemic hit, they did their aerification of greens and tees then, rather than waiting until July when they normally do it when it's really hot and there aren't as many golfers. So they tried to jump on that. Complete other projects, including the 2.5 acre conversion from turf to the native areas, which helps with the overall amount of watering, mowing, pesticides, fertilizer, all of that. So it helps lower the maintenance costs and really improves the wildlife habitat, which hopefully you enjoy a couple of those pictures there. And then of course our tree planting continues up there, as well as we try to get back the number of trees that we lost when the Ridge changed a few years back. Stonebridge, one interesting fact on this information, you see the gallons of potable and canal water that was used this year. That is an increase of 16 million gallons of water from the year before. And that's all related to those weather challenges that I went over at the top there. Okay, so moving on to park maintenance. So I won't go through all of this. You can see the amenities to the right, some of the information on the left that's applicable. A couple things. One is the trees that we have there, the 4530. The value of those trees in the city is over $3 million. So that's significant. And that is an increase of 367 trees from the year before that. Another thing I just wanted to point out was the water usage. So we're at 32.9 inches of water usage this past year, which was up some from the year before, which is at just over 30 inches, excuse me. But compared to the Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District, it's good because they use 39 inches of water. So the staff are really trying to be cognizant of what we can do to help with water use. This is a grid that we normally show each year as well. So this shows the acreage maintained per FTE. I know it says employee, but it's really per FTE. And we are at, with the acquisition of the 2 county parks, we're at 16.22 acres. Last year, or the year before, 2019, we were at 14.57. So we were closer to what Murray City is currently. But ideally, we want to get to 12 acres per FTE. That will help us significantly. And we'll still be at the higher end of the range for sure in comparison. But it's something that would help us a lot with some of the detail work and the repair work that is frequently needed in our parks.
Nancy?
Yes.
How many FTEs would that require to get down to 12 per?
So it would be, well, about
additional.
4 additional people. We're talking probably about, I believe, and I can get you the figures exact, but I believe it was about 4 more full-time employees, 4 or 5, and a few seasonals.
Okay, thanks.
So, and that is information that I can share with Mr. Pyle so that you have that more available to you as well. So.
Nancy, were we able to find enough people to work seasonal this year?
No, we were not. And part of that we feel is what we start seasonal employees at for pay is a lot lower than some. The county started them at $13 an hour and we were at 10. So we're hoping to maybe make some modifications there. We're looking at some program mods to help. That's part of it. Another part of it is this last summer, it was difficult to find employees anywhere, honestly. It was a challenge. And it's not easy work, you know, working outside in the heat and things like that. So we're trying to come up with some ways that we'll be able to be successful in hiring more seasonals in the coming year.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Okay, so on our park planning side, so we finished up the Grand Vistas Park construction. Peachwood Park remodel, as you can see above, that was our ribbon cutting for Peachwood Park, and turned out great. The community loves it. Having that artificial turf surfacing helps so much with strollers and wheelchairs and walkers, and you know, and regardless of the age or ability, it's something that was I'm really happy we were able to do. And again, thanks to the council for approving a program mod for that. You paid for part of that. A grant paid for about 50% as well. So that's really nice. The Utah Salt Lake Canal Trail construction in West Valley City, so out to 7200 West, has been completed by Salt Lake County. We contributed some funding for that, but then they did the work on that. Park maintenance shop, staff love it. They're moved in. That's been great for them. And then a lot of concrete asphalt work done at Centennial, as you can see, as well as Parkway Park parking lot and the Parkway Park basketball courts. And then 8 new park signs were replaced. Current projects, so the Parkway Park remodel, this is a picture at the top now of the basketball court. So you can see some fun colors in there. It was resealed before painted. You can kind of see the West Valley logo, not very well. I needed a better picture, but that's on the courts as well as hot shot spots and things. There will be some signage up as well for some different skills and different things that kids can do or anybody can do if they're not playing a full game on the courts. That's all part of this grant-funded remodel that we will have completed this spring. And so you'll be getting another ribbon cutting for all of that. It's been just fantastic. To the north of those kids there on that grass area, you're going to have a pollinator garden in there as well with some educational signage. So we're excited about that. Grasmere Park, and I apologize for the document that was sent to you. It said impact fee funding. It's actually being funded by CDBG. Grasmere Park is the Trang property that we've spoken of before. And as with our newer parks, we're asking the neighborhoods and communities for their input on names that they would like to see for the parks. And this is the one that was selected. Westridge Estates Park, we are working on that. Newton Farms Park, a little bit limited. It's a little bit behind some of the others, but there has been some work done there. We are completing some landscaping by the pump track. And if you haven't seen the amazing West Valley City marker on the Mountain View Corridor Trail, it's really cool. Mr. Pyle's interns worked on that with John Rock, and we are doing some landscaping work there this year. Salt Lake County is planning on in the spring or summer to put out for bid work for the Pioneer Crossing Park. So we'll be seeing some groundbreaking there. And then of course we're continue to assess the county parks and hopefully getting some of the work done that needs to be done a little more urgently. And then the continued land acquisition. So on the fine, oh yes, Mayor.
Before you leave that on your park planning, I'll just mention, I'll bring it up more with the council on our strategic plan meeting, but I'm wondering if we ought to put an art object in each of our parks. In other words, and not the same thing in each park, and not necessarily a mural, but something that has an art feature.
Yeah, absolutely. We can look at that. And they exist, that they in different parks, you know, so.
I've seen them around, and maybe for our future parks, we ought to consider that. And I'll talk with the council more on that, see what they think. Don't want to do it here, it takes too much time.
No, absolutely, and I'd be happy to offer some recommendations and ideas as well. So thank you, Mayor. So to finish everything, we have some of our department priorities, some of which you've seen in the past, the capital repair and replacement. We, again, as always, we have aging facilities. There's coming along with that are safety concerns and really repair and maintenance that needs to happen. Some original playgrounds and parking lots that are in disrepair, that kind of thing. To the right is our park maintenance personnel. This really reflects information we've already discussed in regards to the FTE comparison with other cities, with the additional streetscapes and trees and things that we maintain along 2700 West, 4100 South, all of those things that continue to increase, which are great. And we're happy to do that and think it's amazing for the city. But the FTEs are something we need to look at. Bottom left is the land acquisition. We are still working on that. The pandemic slowed some things down. With some of the individuals we were speaking with, but we're hoping to be able to move forward in the next couple of months with more information on that. Far right is our park development funding. As you know, the park impact fees that we collect are just not sufficient. What we collect from a development does not pay for a park to be built. So I know that the city is looking at some different options on what those fees are. And then lastly, in the center is the administrative. And from the needs assessment, you'll recall we are creating a department advisory board, looking at possibly even an employee committee within our department to really finalize a marketing and communications plan that will work effectively, and certainly utilize Sam Johnson's department on that. And then we've also been working on and looking at our national accreditation, which is CAPRA through NRPA. So with that, are there any questions or beyond what's been asked at this point?
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Not hearing anything else, we'll move on to the police department. Chief Jacobs, it looks like she's on, so.
I am here. Good
Away.
evening, Mayor and Council. I will share my screen and maybe share. There we go. Okay, here we are. Spoiler alert, the PD is doing really well and we are serving the citizens to the best of our ability. So moving right along, maybe. There we go. So the police department is currently authorized at 265 employees. 217 of them are sworn police officers. 48 of them are civilian. We do have some frozen positions that we are looking forward to filling as soon as possible. And we're currently carrying 7 police officer vacancies. Actually, in order for this to be prepared on time, it was prepared on December 15th, I think. As it sits right this minute, we have 8 vacancies, but we are in the process of getting those filled. We have a PT test this Saturday. It takes about 3 months to get through the entire process, so we're going to be carrying some vacancies for a little bit, but we are on track to get them filled. And as of the creation of this document, we had 11 officers in training. As it sits right now, we are fully staffed in patrol and detectives, which is the first time in years that both patrol and detectives have been fully staffed and operational. So now we're able to start backfilling some of the specialty units that have been vacant for quite some time with all of these newer officers coming off of training. Moving on, these are the calls for service to include the traffic stops. Blue is calls for service, orange is traffic stops, comparative for the last 3 years. You'll note that we're down a little bit, but if we add in the remaining 2 weeks of the year, it's about 5,000 calls. It would put us right up where we have been in years past.
Chief?
Yes, sir.
Am I the only one that's having a problem?
No, you fade in and out.
Okay. Let me see if I can.
That's good.
Mayor, can you hear me?
I can now. I was disconnected.
Oh, okay.
I lost completely my connection here locally, so.
All right, I got your text real quick there, so I wasn't sure if it was just the chief being disconnected or if you were actually having issues with your computer. Chief, you're back?
I believe so. I switched to my iPad. Hopefully that'll help.
Yeah, that audio's better.
Yeah, but I was kicked completely out. I had to sign back in, so I had problems on my end too. But I'm back.
Broadcast. And I'm trying to get the share screen on my iPad. Where is Bunderson when I need him?
Everybody I know everybody had the presentation in their packet. I'm not sure if everybody has access to see it as well, Chief, but some of us do. Oh, there you go. It's up now.
Oh, good. Okay. I don't know if I can figure out how, to advance it. There we go. I think we're on. Okay.
All right.
We went through authorized staffing. These are calls for service. So in a nutshell, we're just over 100,000 calls a year. Daily, that looks like about 300 calls, give or take. And we have roughly about 35 patrol officers daily that respond to those 300 calls. So we are busy for sure. This is the crime threshold comparison for 2020. The blue is an aggregate kind of weighted average for the last 5 years, and then orange is 2020. You can see in several of the areas crime is down, in a couple areas the crime is up, and this is just a handful of sample crimes. This is response time. As promised last year, the definition has been changed to something that's more realistic, to where the citizens perceive the response time rather than the drive time that's been provided in the past. So this is the response time from the time the citizen calls dispatch and is speaking to them to the time an officer arrives. So that includes them providing information to dispatch, dispatch providing information to the officer, and the officer driving to the scene. As you can see, it's remained pretty consistent over the last 3 years. And just to follow up with that, this second slide, it's the same graph, but it provides you more with definitions on the right-hand side as far as what a priority 1, priority 2, and priority 3 call consists of. Priority 1 is in progress. It's when there's a likelihood that someone's hurt or being hurt. It also includes when someone is in cardiac arrest or there's an accident with injuries. So that's our highest priority. Priority 2 is typically calls that just occurred, where the suspect has left the scene and there's no longer an imminent threat, or there's an in progress call where it's not necessarily a crime, like a suspicious circumstance. And then priority 3 calls are non-injury accidents, vehicle thefts. You can see those on the right-hand side.
Do those 3 priorities cover essentially all your calls?
No, sir. We go priority 1 through 9, 9 being telephonic calls, but priority 1 through 3 are the majority of the response calls, the in-person response calls.
Okay, thank you.
So this last year, 2020, has allowed us an opportunity to, it's provided us some challenges, and it's provided us an opportunity to evaluate just about every single aspect of police department operations and how we do business. And we've been able to adapt and overcome in many areas. Many of the adaptations are things we were forced into that we wouldn't have thought of before, but they seem to be working out really well, and we'll probably continue those moving forward. We have definitely enhanced our online services to the community. And a couple of the other challenges that we're facing that we faced in 2020 is for the first time in this area, we've seen civil unrest like we've never known before. And with that, we were able to adapt in ways that we needed to and address it safely and provide assistance to area agencies to keep the community at large safe. And then one of the other anticipated challenges coming into this year, we started last year, was a CAD RMS changeover. CAD is dispatch, RMS is our records management system, and that will be changing to a completely different system, which will create some degree of upheaval, but again, we will adapt and overcome and face that challenge and deal with it as it comes. That being said, I pledge to you that we will continue to pursue best practices as a police department. We will continue to be transparent in our actions and take accountability for both our actions and our employees. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, Mayor, Council, and City Manager Pyle for your support throughout this last year. It has been a challenging time, and I appreciate you all taking the effort to remain informed about the issues and also informed about how our practices are in line with best practices, and the support that you provide us is immeasurable. So thank you for that. And do any of you have any questions for me?
Well, hearing none, I guess not. You did a great job. Thank you, Chief. Council, we're at basically 6:25. We have our open space documents and reports and a closed session that we need to take care of. How do you want to handle these time-wise? Do you want to delay the start of our regular meeting?
Mayor, I would suggest that we bump the open space discussion to another agenda and start our regular meeting in a few minutes and take the closed session after we're done with the building authority meeting.
Thank you. That works out great. Any concerns from council members with that modification?
No.
Hearing none. Then we will delay the open space requirements discussion. Just quickly, anything urgent that we need to report or bring up to the council before we adjourn for our regular meeting?
Starting time for the strategic planning meeting in a couple of Fridays. When we're not getting together, I think we'll be providing our own breakfast as it is, and I don't know what time we want to start the meeting.
Mr. Pyle, we traditionally do 8 o'clock with breakfast, but we're not doing breakfast in there, so.
We're at your disposal, Mayor and Council, whatever you want to do.
Council members, do you want to start it early, like at 8 o'clock?
9 o'clock sounds really good.
Well, you may just get your wish because no one's speaking out against it.
Yield to the council member from District 3.
There we go. 9 o'clock it is.
Okay.
And we'll get a Zoom invite, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that will be, if needed, both days.
Okay.
All right. With that then, a motion to adjourn and
Move
So
to
moved.
adjourn.
motion is before us. Without objection, we will stand adjourned. Hearing no objections, it's unanimous.